Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. Kevin Hicks here with EarthWorks with another podcast, and got a special guest today, Mr. Duane Sharpe. He is the sales manager for Brett Young in British Columbia. Duane, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thanks for the invite. This should be fun.
Yeah, you were a little reluctant at first, but I think it's a good conversation. So, just for those of you listening, the reason I wanted Duane on, he and I have gotten to be pretty close friends. He's one of the distributor reps that I call on in my territory. He's with Brett Young, which is you cover coast to coast now with your company, right? Just about in Canada?
Yeah, primarily I would say Ontario through to British Columbia. We have some customers in Quebec and the eastern provinces, but generally Ontario through BC.
Okay. And we work together in British Columbia and on Vancouver Island, and have had some epic trips, I think, over the last couple of years, and it's been good. But what I wanted to talk to you about, because like we talked about before we got on here, we have had similar backgrounds, and there's been a lot of discussion. There's always a lot of discussion about how we get to where we are, and the dreaded term, the dark side, getting on the dark side. And yeah. Both of us were golf course superintendents, and I wanted to get somebody on who's had a similar experience, because I don't really like talking about myself. But you were reluctant at first, but I think it's good to have you on, and we'll talk about this and maybe dispel some rumors about what it's like to be a salesperson in the industry, and maybe shed some light on some of the things and some of the challenges and struggles that we face that others on the growing side don't necessarily consider. So
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So tell me, give me a little bit of your background. How did you get started in the industry? When? As I mentioned, you were a golf course superintendent, but where did it all start?
Yeah, born and raised in Winnipeg. At the age of 11, my parents introduced me to golf. Really enjoyed the game. At age 13, I used to ride my bike to a local club and be a caddy. So I'd show up on Saturday, Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. and wait to be chosen. It was a private Jewish club in Winnipeg, actually, kind of called Glendale. So that's how I kind of got into the game and into the knowledge of the game.
Early bird gets the loop, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Got to be there first.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good experience. And yeah, strangely enough, the next 2 years I worked with two of my best friends at a cemetery, a local cemetery. Same thing. We would ride our bikes and we mowed grass and weed eated around grave sites. And in fact, we dug about 6 graves per year, 6 feet down, just like they say. We had outlines that would take us all day to dig, and then the next day the ceremony would happen, and then we would unfortunately bury those people the next day. But that opened my eyes to cutting grass and weed eating and doing it efficiently, and it was a great outdoor summer job. So I just love doing that.
Yeah, you never shared that with me. That's an interesting.
No, I know. It's interesting. You know how you have the 3 questions you usually get with Apple or Mac or iCloud. It's the name. You know, what was your first job? And my answer is always this grave digger.
Grave digger. Well, so now all of us know what your passcode is.
Yeah, there you go. There's one of the 3. Maybe I'll get the other 2 the rest of the podcast here. After that, I found my love for the game and became a member at Breezy Bend Country Club as a junior member, sponsored member, and they had an opening on the grounds crew. So I was golfing as a junior and also working on the grounds crew. And that's where my interest really peaked, as I had 2 great mentors at that time, Ian Martinezson and Rob Ham, who directed me to college. They said, "Hey, you're pretty good at what you're doing out here. You think you might have an interest?" I said, "Yeah, I didn't even know there was an interest or college or university opportunities." So worked at Breezy Bend for a couple summers, decided to go to Olds College in Alberta, which was just a small 2-year diploma program in horticulture, majoring in turfgrass management.
Right. The program's still going.
The program's still going, yeah. I believe it's the only one in Western Canada right now. No, there's a small one here in Vancouver too, Kwantlen College, but Olds College is kind of the leader. They do a lot of online stuff still.
Yeah.
that college experience led me to a conference in Calgary where I approached the superintendent at a high-end club, Bears Paw Country Club. His name was Todd Puttycombe. I remember just sweating, going to introduce myself, and I knew who he was, and I knew the stature he had in the business. So I introduced myself to Todd, say, hey, what do you think the chances are of getting a job? And he says, come see me tomorrow. And it happened so quickly, and took a job. And at the same year, in fact, Todd had 6 turf management students working for him.
No kidding.
Which is something that would never happen today.
Was this an assistant's position or?
No, not at all, Kevin. Back in the day, we had to work our way up. So
yeah.
This was just learning how to mow, and we did some construction, we did some irrigation, but he had 6 turf students on his staff that I lived with, a few of them. We chummed around, we played golf together. But he had a great gig going on with that much experience coming out of college and the interest that we showed as turf students.
So you had graduated at that point?
I graduated, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So first job out of college. 5 years at Bears Paw, and then I decided to renew my interest in the industry. I found like I was stuck at Bears Paw. There was 5 or 6 of us still in the industry that were there. I'd gone through construction, irrigation, kind of a second assistant, weekend supervisor, but I wasn't going anywhere. And so I felt, how do I get an edge on all my buddies that I'm living with? So I decided to go back and take a short course at University of Guelph.
Okay.
I think that was 1996.
Okay.
Took that short course with Andrew Hardy, actually, who's another sales manager, and with Brett Young. And I came back with a newfound interest and passion, and I did very well in, let's go back. I didn't do very well in college. It was just a piece of paper for me. I had a lot of fun at 17, 18, 19 years old. So I felt like I had to go get some good education to take me to the next level. And Guelph was amazing. I worked hard. It was only a month long, very intense, 8-hour days. And this newfound confidence, I ran into Superintendent Ron Hume, who we played superintendent hockey with at the time, was the head guy at Links of Glen Eagles in Calgary. Is a new golf course being built. And I think that was really piqued my interest. Let's get into something different here, the construction side of things. So I took an assistant job with Ron, growing in a new golf course. My title the first 2 years was kind of grow-in superintendent, where I planted the grass, I fertilized the grass, and I irrigated the grass to get it up and running. And then kind of went into the assistant super role, where we, hired the staff and brought them on. Great stepping stone, loved that job. And again, 6 years at Glen Eagles led me to my first superintendent's job up in Edmonton, an opportunity doing another grow-in and establishment at Blackhawk Golf Club. So big step, moving to a new city. I had a girlfriend at the time who decided to move with me. She's now my wife. Hardcore construction for a couple of years, and we opened Blackhawk in 2004. And I decided to leave in 2014.
Okay, so back up a little bit, because I think there's a detail in there. The Blackhawk job is where you met the architect, Jeff Mingay, correct?
Correct.
Now, was he the architect on the project, or was he in a different role at that point?
Interesting enough, anyone who knows Jeff right now is quite experienced, but the job at Blackhawk 2002 through 2005 for Jeff was really his first experience in the ground, digging bunkers, working with excavators, dozers.
Really?
And Jeff and I became very close.
You were roommates, right?
He lived with me, and really opened my eyes to architecture, really helped me out as a professional superintendent and what Rod Whitman was trying to portray at that moment. And we established a very good relationship.
I think that's how you and I met. It was I remember meeting in San Diego. It was probably through social media. We knew each other, but you and Jeff were, of course, enjoying a pint, and I walked by, and somehow there was somebody else that knew all of us and introduced us. But
that's right. I remember that patio in San Diego. That's funny. I'd never even thought of that.
It was a pretty nice day. But Jeff has certainly been busy the last several years, and in fact, he's doing a couple of projects right down the road from me right now. So
super proud of him. We went through some hard times and shared a lot of thoughts and feedback with each other through a few years, and he had really lost interest there for a few years, jumped back into Sagebrush Golf Club, and he's just taken off since, and very, very happy and proud of Jeff of where he's gone.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Okay, so 2004, you decided to leave.
2014. So
14. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, 2014. Again, I had a wife at the time. My kids, I've got twin girls. They were in grade 4, and something jumped out at me, Kevin, that was just like, I haven't had a summer holiday. My wife usually took off in the summers with the kids. Staffing was becoming more difficult. The weather in Edmonton was changing, where there was all of a sudden 6 months of snow cover, and I was working for a difficult, challenging / demanding owner at the time, and something hit. I call it a midlife crisis. I think I was just in my early 40s at that time, but I knew I had to make a change. So it was a very, very difficult decision, but I got through the season, got the greens tarped, everything protected, and then made the announcement that I was done the end of October.
With no plan.
With no plan. No plan. Except a supportive wife.
Yeah.
Who kind of understood and felt my stresses at the time.
Yeah. It's funny how they can pick up on that stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. And unfortunately, we'd been sharing this for a few years where I was having a tough time working more. You know, I felt like I was not the greatest husband, definitely wasn't being a very good dad, and mainly just because of the time I was spending at the golf course and not with my family and my children.
And even when you're home, you're not home because you're thinking about the pump station not running, or you're worrying about this or that, or who's.
Yeah, that'll probably come up later in this podcast, but I don't miss that. You know, run into the pump station at midnight, making sure things are going to get watered on a plus 30-degree day for the next day with a tournament coming on. So
that's right.
Yeah, just really overworked myself, and realized that there's better things in life.
Yeah.
More important things in life.
Yeah. So how long before you found Brett Young, or was there a step in between?
Yeah. I think at the time I left, Brett Young had a posting out for this job in British Columbia.
Okay.
So I exercised my options to talk to Brett Young. I also talked to, you know, the Toro, the John Deere, the other sales rep opportunities. I talked to all my reps that I had at the golf course, just saying, hey, what are the chances of getting something? Because I knew I wanted to stay in this industry.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. You'd never considered leaving the industry.
I never considered leaving, but what I did know, Kev, I did not want to be a superintendent again.
Right.
I felt like I was leaving almost at the top of my game. I just hosted the Canadian Mid-Amateur. The golf course was great. Unfortunately, the stress in my family became center stage. And so, yeah.
Our spouses are very, very good at being a grounding force in our lives, and sometimes they kind of let us unravel a little bit more than maybe you'd wish they did, but at the same time, I think we definitely need to come to that discovery on our own, and our experiences just pretty much overlay each other. It's the timing was a little different, but.
Yeah, we went 2 months where I didn't have a job and I didn't have a plan, and that's where this change to Brett Young really came about. I remember distinctly having a lunch meeting with my rep at that time, Travis Unger, who's now my boss.
Right.
I had a lunch meeting with them. We were sitting in the clubhouse at Blackhawk, and I said, "So you got a job opening in BC?" And he said, "Mm-hmm." He said, "Do you think I could do that job?" And I could see his eyes kind of lit up, and he's like, "Are you serious?" And it's like, "Maybe." I said, "I don't know, but what do you think, Travis? Do you think I could do this job?" And he's like, "Absolutely."
Mm-hmm.
Whereas me at that time, I was like, wasn't even really thinking that direction. It was just more about, do you think I have some of the characteristics to take on this job?
Yeah. Well, clearly it worked, right?
So far, so good.
So that was the first and final opportunity, and and you jumped on it, and you've been there ever since.
Yeah, I started, left my job end of October. I started with Brett Young in January 2014.
Okay.
Came to British Columbia. There was currently no representation in British Columbia for Brett Young at that time. There had been a few reps, but not the presence just wasn't very well represented of what Brett Young was and the culture we were trying to establish. So just went on the road hard for a few months without my family.
And that's something that became evident to me right away when I met you, and have started to work a lot more with some of the other guys in the Western provinces, is that your culture, your whole team works in concert with each other very well, and they're very in tune with clients' needs. And I think all of you, or most of you, had been superintendents prior to, correct?
Yeah. I applaud Travis Unger again, who's our vice president in Canada, who has really established this team of past ex-superintendents. In fact, I think there's probably 18 of 20 of us that are past superintendents in the business. So yeah, if I could say anything, it's just a great team, a great environment, with a fantastic leader who's really developed this culture. And it all started with Travis. He was the first PTR being a professional turf and reclamation rep, with Brett Young in Alberta. And so where he's taken the company over the last probably 20 years now is quite impressive.
And the company got its start in seed production, correct?
Yeah, back in the 1930s, it was a family-owned business, seed production, soybeans, canola, grass seed, and has expanded since then. I believe it was the early 1900s where we started, or early 1990s, 1900s, early 1990s where PTR was established.
Okay.
Again, 20 to 30 years.
Yeah. And the seed division is still going.
Yeah, seed really is the majority of what Brett Young does. Again, the PTR department, we're a small little entity of what the whole Brett Young really is. Again, we have 25 people in our department. I think there's 190 employees with Brett Young across Canada.
Oh wow. Yeah, not to get too far off track, but you shared with me one time some of the specific to the turf industry, the ryegrass production in Canada, and how that really gives you a leg up with respect to importing, and there's a lot less red tape with producing it in country. That was really interesting to me that you've got that angle.
Yeah, and I've learned a lot over the last 7 years I've been with the company that Brett Young sells our perennial ryegrass to over 100 countries around the world. 100 countries. And I had no idea how large that was.
And the irony of that is, what we learned in school down here in the States is ryegrass won't survive in the northern part of the US, and you're growing it in regions that are far more brutal than anything.
Again, remember, it's seed production.
Right.
We're not growing it year round. It's strictly seed production.
Right.
So the seed production with our climate is very conducive to perennial ryegrass. In fact, we grow fescues, we grow Kentucky bluegrasses, and we have lots of partnerships with companies throughout the U.S. where Brett Young seed is used.
Yeah, I just ran into some not too long ago from when I was down in California. So it's all over the place.
Very in fact, Travis's dad, Wayne Unger, is responsible for the majority of the ryegrass sales in the U.S. So again, small company, family run, but Wayne's a big part of the company for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's talk about, we talked about culture a little bit, but let's talk about how you, with your experience as a superintendent, what's your agronomic approach? Let's say you meet a new customer or somebody you haven't worked with before. How do you break the ice with them? What's the focus? How do you get the conversation started, and where does it go from there?
Yeah, great question. It really starts about the introduction of who we work for And I think the name Brett Young now is known within Western Canada, but what does Brett Young do and what do we have to offer? So I break the ice just letting them know that we have a great portfolio of products from granular, liquid, organics, course supplies, some equipment, and just saying, how can I help you? Or what are you doing these days? And so we're very a solution based company, but
Right.
find out from that guy, what do you need from me as much as what do I need from you?
Yeah. Well,
Right?
but you hit on something there that I think is missed sometimes, and that all important question is, how can I help? You know, what are you dealing with that I can help offer a solution to, that you know, we can get you to sleep a little bit better at night, or
Yeah.
you know, create better conditions on the golf course.
And I think at that point, specifically golf courses, if guys know that I've been in the trenches, I've sat behind the similar desk, I've dealt with a lot of the same issues, it makes it easier to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
Again, I don't find that I necessarily push products on anyone. That's not what I'm in the business for. I'm there to help, even if it's agronomically or with irrigation. There's a big experience there that we can, a wealth of information that we can
Right.
share, not just agronomics, right?
Well, and I think being like-minded, when we were both on the other side of the desk, I know I didn't respond to, here's what I've got today to sell you. I responded to somebody with a good ear that understood. And one of the things that struck me right away with you when I rode around the first time is the golf course walks and how valuable those were, you know, and both for you and your customers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take a 2 or 3 hole walk, take 15, 20 minutes and walk and talk and look at grass and feel it. And, you know, to me, that consultative sort of approach that all of you have, man, it resonates with me. And it's something I've really tried to, you know, model my approach on. And I can tell you that it's not done that way all over the world.
You know, that's what makes a great day for me.
Yeah.
I could have 6 appointments scheduled for the day. If it turns into 3 appointments where I spend an hour with the guy on the golf course, I have no problem canceling the other 3. Right. Because I've been out. I look at turf, we talk, we share similar problems, issues. That's a great day for me, where I can go home at the end of the day going, wow, I got to see his course. I got to learn their operation. I got to give him a few ideas. That's what's satisfying about my job right now.
I got to dump buckets of sand into a dry jack machine.
Yeah.
And then post pictures about it. I don't know whether you actually got dirty or if that was just a photo op. I'm not sure. But.
No, I actually did that again. I love doing that. I've helped out numerous tournaments, Kevin. I've helped out with some PGA events. This customer at this time just said, hey, we've got the course closed for 3 days. I got a lot of projects going on. Would you like to come by and help out no matter what you could do? And he had the dry jack going on the greens. They were building tee boxes. They were paving cart paths. They were pulling down trees. They were treating ponds. And I just said, whatever you need me to do,
that's right.
let me know. And so it was fun, actually. I was with the general manager, believe it or not, and we were bucket by bucket filling in a dry jack machine for 5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the things we miss, right? I mean, that's the day-to-day stuff that we don't necessarily get to experience that I think
it keeps it interesting. It keeps it interesting though too. I've helped out with an LPGA tournament at Vancouver Golf Club, and Point Grey Golf Club had tournament just a while back that I was cutting fairways, and just kind of keeps you in the loop a little bit. You know, you bring donuts in the morning and meet the crew and see how hard they're working, and you know,
I've got an opportunity to volunteer for the Women's Open this year at Olympic Club. Oh, I'm already in, and
nice.
And the superintendent had said, "Well, I'll get you something cushy." I said, "I don't want a cushy job. I want to be on a mower, and a walk mower preferably. You know, just get me back out and get my fingers green and my feet wet and things like that." So yeah, it's definitely a part of it that I miss. So getting those opportunities is pretty special.
Yeah, and it speaks something for our business too. Like I said, I held the Canadian mid-amateur in September, before I left. It was September. All the summer staff had gone.
Right.
The Canadian Golf came to me and said, hey, we're going off 1 and 10 at 7 a.m. in September. And I kind of went, what? I have like 7 people on staff right now. Like, how am I going to pull this off? So sure enough, I called up my industry reps, and I had fertilizer equipment, even a fuel rep came out and cut fairways and did some divots in the evening and did whatever they could, right? So I learned a lot from asking them and knowing that I would also do it for any of my
That's right. It's all part of the give back, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just so much fun.
Right.
Getting back in the trenches again, again, divots or raking sand traps or sitting on a mower.
And the camaraderie is it pays off in relationships in the long term too. And it's
yeah. I remember one day at Point Grey when I was on a surrounds mower, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. It started to rain, the wind picked up, and I was in my good rain gear, but I was frozen, like absolutely frozen. I'm like shaking, just looking at my watch, going, "When is this going to be over?" So knowing that I could go back home today and do my actual day job, which was nice and warm and cozy.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we've gotten soft in our pickups and
yeah, or we've been there, done that. We don't need to do it again.
Right. Well, that's a good point. All right, shift gears a little bit because most of the people that listen are in the States and not in Canada. So, and it's always surprising to me when you cart me around and whether it's an educational session or whether it's just you and I and a superintendent, it always is striking to me some of the tools that we take for granted in the States that you don't have, and you may not have a list of them, but with respect to especially fungicides and pesticides, there's some things that you don't have. So, we don't need to talk about which ones they are, but how does that impact how you go to business and how you help people? It's interesting.
No, it doesn't impact me at all, Kevin, because we don't even have it.
Because you don't have it. Right.
I saw that question come up on your outline today. I'm like, how am I going to answer this? Because we just do what we got to do with what we have.
Well, there's a motivation behind this, and I just talked with Gina Reese last week, and we talked a little bit about the fact that by and large, and I think Canadian superintendents have experienced this much more frequently and impactfully than those of us in the States, but we tend not to make changes to what we do until we're legislated into it. And I've looked for a long time before I even jumped into sales. I looked for a long time to my Canadian counterparts as to, it's almost the canary in the coal mine as to how we're going to do things differently when these tools aren't available to us. So that was kind of the motivation for writing that question down. Is a lot of them you had even in the time that we've been in the industry, and they're now gone. So what adjustments have been made, or is it the fact that everybody's on level playing field, that if it affects conditions or if it affects how you do business, it affects everybody the same, so it's not a big deal?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. Certainly you got to be more creative. First thing, I think we miss would be products to control POA.
Sure.
So whether that's proxy or trimmets, I don't know the details on them, Kevin, but you hear about them all the time being used in the US.
Right.
We have Primo, Tenex, and Velocity would be our three control products against POA. And you and I both know if you can control POA, you're growing just bent grass, you're going to be much more successful.
Right.
It's 20 minus 30 degrees in Canada.
Yeah.
So the POA growers or POA golf courses, predominantly POA, still suffer more than the bent grass. And if there could be some way from establishment or new sod to control that POA, we would be much better off. So I think those are two products in particular would be missing.
Sure.
From proxy, from my understanding anyways, stopping the seed head.
Yeah.
Stopping the spread.
It's interesting. Do you ever expect any of those to make it to market up there or no?
Yeah, we talk about it every year with our reps from Bayer and Syngenta and other companies, but it's a long process, as you well know.
Right.
Getting something through the PMRA in Canada, it's a long process. So it's been there. It's just something's holding it back.
Right.
And so, yeah, being more creative, I think, you got to get back to the whole holistic approach of turf grasses.
Yep.
Maintaining a healthy stand and being able to talk to guys about agronomics and the timing of your agronomics or your practices, sand top dressing, keeping up with the industry on research and new fungicides that are being used. We have other partners in Canada that have come on with new DMIs, to look after the propiconazoles that have now been eliminated. Not propiconazole, chlorothalonil has been reduced.
Recently, right?
Yeah, recently. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely becomes more challenging.
Right. Well, but I think it also, maybe a loose analogy for me is I'll probably date myself now, but I always felt when metal spikes went away, we lost a degree of sharpness in how we managed putting surfaces, because you had to manage for those spike marks, and you did things differently. It wasn't right or wrong. You just had to do things differently. And I think a lot of us realized pretty quickly that we had shifted gears from managing lateral growth in a lot of respects, and that because it wasn't a concern. So for you guys, maybe that, and likewise, your climatic conditions and growing conditions from one side of the Rockies to the other, where you are now is vastly different than where you started.
Yeah, just 2 hours away.
It's amazing. They're completely different worlds.
It'd be similar to yourself, though, dealing with the Pacific Northwest to
Sure.
Spokane, Idaho, right?
Yep, no question. And it's a really different game. But you're right. You just adapt and you figure out ways to work around it. And
yeah, we're always adding to our portfolio too, and coming up with creative solutions on how to make a healthier, denser turf, resistant to disease and stress. And we're working with our customers as best we can in each situation.
Right. And probably sharing a lot more, I would assume, because you're all challenged the same way.
Hey, that's one of the great things about our business, Kevin. I really enjoy that part of it. Is sharing what Joe Blow is doing down the road might be working for you. I don't like to mention clubs or who they are, but just saying, what do you think about this option?
Yeah.
It's been used extensively in your area, and I've seen great success with it. Would you like to try something different?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. So we could probably talk about that by itself for quite a while, but I want to keep moving here. Aside from this year, because I think there's some things that we've all talked about with respect to the increase in rounds and things like that. But besides this year, what are the commonalities that you run into in talking to, especially golf course superintendents, but certainly turf managers in general? What things are common that that the average person, the average turf manager on his property is maybe only thinking about his property, but you see it time and time again, stop after stop. What are those things?
Number one, staffing.
Yeah.
And I think you might be the same in your area.
Absolutely. The whole country.
And I think Canada has a whole new twist, or Northern America has a whole new twist, where you find good people, you can't keep them year round.
Right.
This is a seasonal sport in a lot of areas in Canada. So you find that key guy, but you have 5 months of winter. How do you keep that key guy on or coming back next year?
That's right. So,
you might find your core 4 or 5 salaried people that are on year round, but those shoulder seasons are very important before you get into the students or university students coming on.
Is that similar in Western BC where you are, or are there more year-round positions available?
There's definitely more year-round, Kevin. Right. Yeah, and more unionized communities too.
Okay.
Golf courses. Some golf courses can offer the $29 to $30 an hour mark to start. Another one down the road, a public golf course is offering 15.
That's non-union.
That's non-union.
Right. Yeah, you shared something with me recently, and that blew me away. But
have benefits and a lot of perks and golfing rights, and the public is just like, come in from your 6 till 2 o'clock, get out of here, and then you can't golf.
Yeah.
Staffing's just really challenging, and I don't know what it's like in the United States, but I find mechanics, assistants, and spray techs are in a shortage right now.
No question.
Our colleges can't push out enough quality students to fill all the voids out there. I know Andrew Hardy in Ontario, his his weekly reports are consistently going, there's 6 to 10 assistant jobs in Ontario that are still open right now.
Right, right. Very similar. I think I just saw somebody post something on social media that there were 280 some odd assistance positions posted on the GCSA's website.
How do we change that? Is it people going to school? Is it the amount of schools? How do we change that?
I think it's a cyclical thing, and you know, the conversation kind of revolves around pay. Certainly, you know, I think it's going to be more pronounced in the near future because a lot of areas of the country, there's superintendents that are aging out, and how are you going to fill those spots? when you and I got into the business in the 90s, you know, I came out of school in the early 90s, and I just had to pick where I wanted to go. There were so many opportunities, but there are also a lot of students coming out. And, you know, we've seen countless universities shut down their programs, or there's, you know, they're clinging to 3 or 4 students in a class or something. And, you know, I think the shift that I see a lot of times is focusing more on a candidate's aptitude and not necessarily his experience, his or her experience.
Correct.
You know, finding somebody with a good head on their shoulders that can adapt to the work at hand, and you know, just like you said, and I experienced, once you get on the golf course, it's pretty easy to get hooked and find enjoyment in it.
And I think similar to yourself, I take a lot of pride that through the years as a superintendent and even an assistant, we took those key people that had an interest and say, hey, have you ever thought about taking turf management? And it's awesome to see them succeeding today.
Totally.
But we just need more of that. And is it the wages? Is it the environment? Or why is
I think it's all of it.
The turf management business not being more sought after?
I think it's all of it. And, you know, I don't profess to know all the answers, but, you know, I think there's also programs out there that may take a long time to get there, but I think we've got some programs now that could definitely help us get, you know, recruit new candidates for the industry. And, you know, maybe they don't need to take the traditional route of a turf management degree. Maybe it's just, you know, finding somebody that's interested in the field, but we can, you know, bring them alongside of us and work with them.
And I think that's been a common theme on my tours lately, is taking those key guys off your staff and saying, hey, are you interested in digging a few holes and learning about the irrigation system? Or, you know, do you want to run a weekend staff and be responsible for opening and closing the doors and the fuel tanks at the end of the day? And people are like, oh, responsibility. Okay.
Yeah. I know in my southern region, and I did the same thing. When you have somebody on the crew that's bilingual, that you know, maybe came up through the ranks of the staff, they can definitely bridge a gap, and you can bring them up to speed pretty quickly and make them a tremendous asset to the operation. And you know, hiring from within, to me, is always the default, because you already know the commodity, you already know what you've got in that individual, and you know, it's just a matter of tweaking and some training and getting them to where you need them to be. I think, well, I've certainly seen a lot more of that, and I think it's going to be even more prevalent going forward.
Yeah, and we got to keep filling these colleges and universities to take over the assistant superintendent roles, as you say, are going to roll out here in the next 10 to 15 years. There's a lot of great opportunities, and I find that sad in a sense, that knowing how great this industry has been for myself or you or my peers around the industry, that there's not more of us.
Right. Yeah, I have a feeling it'll bounce back. It's just there's gonna be a little bit of a gap in there that we're gonna need to try to fill. So we'll see. So with that, do you miss it? Would you ever consider going back?
Let's start with the first question first. Do I miss it? Partially.
Yes.
Would I ever go back? No. And that's not taken lightly, though, Kevin.
No, I understand.
We certainly appreciate those days, the morning drives with your dog and the irrigation system going, and the tournaments of hosting and dealing with your members happy with the golf course. There's a lot of great things that we went through.
Right.
on the flip side, the challenges and the stress, now looking back, is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to my customers now, the stress is unbelievable.
Right.
So I think that's what would keep me away, is knowing and responding to, I don't think I want to go through that again.
Yeah. So go on.
How about you?
I actually just went through this exercise within the last few weeks, and it was a great soul searching exercise for me. And at the end of the day, I think I've got so much more that I want to accomplish on this side of the business that I know I'm in the position that I need to be in at this point.
Yeah, we've both had some pretty good runs, both you and I, and I appreciate every day I had. It's just that day-to-day stress. Again, I left Blackhawk when my kids were 14. I had a great relationship with my wife, my kids. I don't know where that would have been if I would have kept up doing the 14, 16-hour grind for another 7 years.
So everybody in the industry can't jump into sales, because then there'd be no one to sell to. So what stresses you out now that maybe you didn't expect, or maybe your customers don't realize? Because there's a lot of things that I never thought about that are daily stresses for me now that, you know, I never even considered when I was still growing grass.
Well, today in particular, it'd be like, is this Zoom meeting actually going to work for 45 minutes? That's my stress today.
We've had that experience, haven't we?
Yeah. However, the first thing that comes to mind would be probably letting down my customers.
Right. Number one.
So whether that's delivery, availability of products that I've talked about, getting in their hands when they need it,
right.
But letting them down hurts a lot. And I don't think they realize that it affects you and I as much as we think.
But the difficult thing about all of those things that you highlighted, because it's exactly the same for me, is that we don't have any control over that stuff. Now, that's not any different than the weather.
Mother Nature.
Yeah, but man, the lessons I've learned about supply chain and you know, things like trucking and delivery, like you said, and finding people to drive the trucks to deliver has been a huge challenge. And you know, those things
cost to do so.
Yeah, those things, and I think our customers are figuring that out. But you know, there were a lot of times where, when I was in the Phoenix market, we had probably a half a dozen brick and mortar suppliers in the Phoenix Valley. It was pretty easy to call on a Thursday and have something on a Friday. And that doesn't happen all the time. And you talk about geography that you deal with, or that I deal with, and start working with common carriers to get you a supply or to deliver something to an end user. I never would have considered that as a stressor for anybody. But you know, Lisa in our office, she doesn't have a day that's a piece of cake, because she's dealing with all of that stuff on a daily basis.
We have one of those with Brett Young. Karen Green is just
Karen Green, yeah,
unbelievable resource for all of us. But knowing what she goes through on a day-to-day basis,
right.
Coordinating trucks and product and distributors and payment and POs, it's a behind the scenes thing that I don't think a lot of superintendents understand. It's like,
right.
Why can't you give me that fungicide tomorrow?
There.
Well, it's in Ontario, about 22-hour drive away, or a dollar cost to fly it here.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's what hurts. It's like
those people in our offices are incredible jugglers, and without them, they definitely wouldn't make anything happen. So it's
been the last 3 years in particular. Travis and Karen have introduced the sales managers across Canada in our weekly meetings, stalking meetings, IPM meetings, we call them, just looking at product, where it is, where to move it. There's a lot of moving parts that I think the superintendent doesn't understand.
Right.
Again, disappointing that you can't get truck from point A to point B in 2 days. For the average guy, it's like, what do you mean? Jump in a truck, drive it for 48 hours, it's here. It's just
It doesn't work that way.
there's
at
a lot
all.
of there's a lot of hands on that product in between, and
Yeah.
paperwork and logistics that make it more difficult.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And I marvel at it every day that things ever work out the way they should with as many hands as touch a product in the course of point A to point B or end user. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the stress thing, and I know the answer is an absolute yes for me, but do you ever feel like you're a counselor with your customers, and sometimes it's just good to just sit there and listen and let them vent a little bit?
After my first 3 years on the job, I used to tell this story all the time, Kevin, that I firmly believe the first 10 minutes of all my sales meetings, I introduce myself or say hello. I just sit and listen for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
What's going on today?
Right.
You know what would really make my day, and I know you haven't had this either, what would really make my day as I walk in is like, hey, Joe, how's it going today? He's like, oh, Sharpie, you won't believe it. The irrigation work last night, my mechanics on par, the reels are sharpened, the turf is perfect, the members are full, they're happy, the sun's shining. Man, I had a good day.
Mic drop.
I had run into that, and I bet you haven't either.
No, and
that's what I really like to see, but it's not out there.
But again, going back to the fact that we have had that experience, we've sat in that seat. I think most of our customers pick up on that, and they know that they've got a trusted ally that may be on the other side of the desk, but we've been there. And I think you had mentioned one time, the appreciation for the fact that we've walked in their shoes is very self-evident when you meet with someone.
Yeah. I couldn't be on the road selling oil field valves today.
Right.
But I feel I do a pretty good job at selling turf products because I understand.
Yeah.
Right? It's relationships, it's experience, and it makes the job that much easier.
Yeah. So I don't like, you shared an article with me from Dave Wilbur that was similar to what I had written for our local chapters, and I read back through it, and it was a little bit different angle, but very similar in the context, I guess. But that concept of the dark side, that's something. If I could switch the thinking on one thing, it would be that it's just the other side of the same coin. And whether a golf course superintendent chooses to admit this or not, he's a salesperson too. Whether you're selling a new fairway mower to your membership, or you're making a presentation for some renovation work, or you're an integral part of a master plan for the golf course, that's all selling. And I think for us, we've drawn on those previous experiences to do what we do now. But I think it's lost sometimes that we're all salespeople. And I've heard that from lots of people that it doesn't matter what you do, you're selling.
Yeah, there's numerous different ways to sell, but you're right. There's different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
We each find our own niche. I find myself based on relationships and experience.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to someone and share some ideas, some thoughts, some consultation that they take and make successful for them. I've done my job.
Right.
But I'm not the guy walking in the door saying, this is the latest, greatest invention that you need to use, or you're an idiot.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's some people out there. You probably do this too. You relate back to the salespeople you've had as a superintendent. After 10 years of being a superintendent, a gentleman walked into my door, and he was previously a milk salesman, and I couldn't relate to him.
Right.
And I know he was trying to sell for the guy or for their company, but I couldn't relate that he'd been a milk salesman and he was just trying to do the same thing in the turf industry. It's like, well, what's the release on your product? And you could see his face just like go red, like he had no idea. But I sold milk in the past.
Right.
You and I were relatable, right? We share experiences, we share some best case scenarios. So
yeah. So our time in the industry has been very similar. So what's the biggest change that you've seen? We've already talked about labor, so we can kind of assume that that's one of them, but what, you know, from a technological standpoint or how we go to business?
Yeah, irrigation systems, equipment are advancing like amazingly.
Yeah.
I find the superintendents are probably working harder than they ever have. Do you find that, Kevin?
Yeah, and in particular, I'm at I don't know if it's a crossroads, but I'm struggling with I'm struggling with how data collection fits into what we do. I think there's a lot of good to be had from data collection, and obviously there are people all over the spectrum as far as how they're wired and how they you know what they enjoy doing, and some are more into numbers and data collection. But you know, we've got so many tools in that regard at our disposal now that we didn't have before. But it's almost to the point, and maybe I'm dead wrong on this, but it seems to me that art of observation is going away in and being replaced by data collection. You know, the feeling and smelling and touching of the turf and knowing what it's going to do. Now, that being said, if you asked me what the biggest technological advance in the industry was, it's a moisture meter, without a hesitation. So there's data collection, but do I need to log it and churn out maps every day, or do I just,
Correct.
You know? So I think there's so many tools, but how many are going to make a superintendent's life better?
Yeah, or what I consider them time wasters. You know, sitting
Right.
down and analyzing all that data day to day, and then having to make a judgment on that data rather than what's out in the field.
Right.
Go for a walk with your dog in the morning and look at the turf and see what's going on, or talk to your staff and what's happening out there, as opposed to, you know, drones and that sort of thing. Again, there's a need for those.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate the need for those and the advancements. It's just at what cost?
Yeah. I've always carried a knife with me as I travel by air mostly now. I can't, unfortunately. Maybe I should place one in all the offices I stop in so that I've got something with me. But you know, going back to the moisture meter thing, I could walk a green, and just like grandma used to check whether the banana bread was done or not, you know, and stick the toothpick in, I could stick my knife in the ground and pull it out and tell by the feel whether there was adequate moisture there. But how do you teach an assistant or an irrigator that same feel? And that's where I think the innovation of things like the moisture meters just blew me out of the water. But
Yeah.
Again, is it a day-to-day tool like my pocket knife, or is it data collection that we're, you know, making real positive changes to maybe easing up on the stresses and the pressures in our lives?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Moisture meter is a great point. I remember centrals when they came in.
Yep.
Central irrigation was unbelievable. Now the heads are doing so much more, spinning different directions, two heads around a green. But how about these electric or motorized mechanical mowers? You know, we were
Robotic.
talking about staff earlier. There's not enough staff to go around, so all of a sudden we're gonna have autonomous mowers out there.
I think that's what's going to push that part of the industry faster than anything.
I think 20 years it really is.
Absolutely.
It's going to be killing the market.
Yeah. And again, you know, I was talking with someone this morning about the fact that a lot of the conversation, I'm sure you would agree with this, a lot of my conversations are really trying to get turf managers to look at their operations from a 30,000 foot view, because we get so locked into, well, you know, that robotic mower, it's too expensive, or it's, you know, this, or it's that. But at the end of the day, if you're short 8 staff members, how expensive is that robotic mower that could take the place of two of those guys and work through the night, or work on off hours, or what have you? I think some of that stuff, you know, that I feel as though this job has afforded me the opportunity to look more objectively at the overall picture of an operation where, unfortunately, because of the busyness and short staffs and all the stresses that superintendents deal with, they can't pull back and look at their operation from that respect as easily as you and I can.
Well, we should probably share this story, Kevin. You come up and travel with me for a few days here in Canada, which hasn't happened in a long time. Why aren't you here lately? Come on.
I don't know. I keep knocking and nobody will let me in.
We spent some time at Victoria Golf Club that morning when the electronic mowers were going.
Yeah.
The autonomous mowers, I'm sorry. And the operator or person transporting was in there raking bunkers and changing the hole. Mm-hmm. I know both you and I looked at each other and going like, what's going on? Is this for real?
This is the future.
There's 3 jobs going on now with one guy.
Right.
It was unbelievable. For me, it was kind of that aha moment going, wow, what am I going to miss out on?
Right. But the funny thing about that, and I don't know if you recall this, on that same green,
what you're going to bring up.
He that operator, I guess it would be, he had to come and get that thing unstuck from a low sprinkler head. So, there's still a place for people, but I think the technology's coming and it needs to come in a lot of respects. But for us to be able to look at it as an industry and say, yes, there's a cost, but there's also an opportunity cost with some of these changes in how we go to business. And the fact that, unless somebody comes up with some great idea, we're going to be short on labor for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And we all know that the golf courses that are being managed are very labor intensive. So we've got to find ways around some of those things. And I think that's where we're going to be in the next, like you said, I think it's going to be less than 20 years, honestly. Maybe not everything.
And that's something I hope you and I can share with our customers these days is just keep educating yourself. Keep going on those demos and see what's out there.
That's
see
right.
What your options are. Don't pigeonhole yourself into what you're doing and think that it's the only way you can do it.
Right.
There's a lot of great ideas coming down the pipeline.
I totally agree. Okay, so I don't know that I've had one of these interviews that the interviewee hasn't said, how in the heck are we going to fill an hour? But we've almost come up against the hour. So I've got one. I know. I told you. Wow. Okay. I've got one final question for you, and I should ask this question of everybody that I've got on here, but
you got me scared now.
No, it's related to what we've been talking about. What makes you hopeful about the future of the industry?
Wow. I know we didn't want to talk about the pandemic, but the pandemic has probably been one of the best things that's ever happened in the golf industry right now. Opening up the availability for people to get out with their family and their children and experience the game and seeing how fun it is. It's accessible. It doesn't need to be expensive. There's still going to be those $20 golf courses. You'll probably agree the golf industry is in a really good place right now.
Okay, so you opened up the box. Now, my follow-up question then would be, what, in your opinion, do we need to do to retain this newfound interest and windfall in the industry? Because I agree, it's been an unbelievable opportunity for
quit driving up the costs.
Right.
Make it affordable. You see these golf courses today that are still running effectively without food and beverage or weddings or extra functions or tournaments. They're financially strong right now. Well, keep that going. Keep the families allowed to come out at the $20 green fee, and you don't have to buy clubs like Bryson DeChambeau for $600 for a driver.
Yeah.
Just make the game accessible to as many people as possible, and you got to grow it from the ground up. You can't hope that the 40-year-olds are going to take over.
I rode around with some superintendents last week in the Bay Area that at very high-end golf courses, and just exactly what you said. There was no less satisfaction out of the golfers on those courses that were paying membership fees, membership dues, in a hot dog at the turn than a $100 steak in the clubhouse. And unfortunately, not enough properties have realized that the true asset of the property is on the golf course.
Right.
And they're, I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of all this added revenue from the last year and being funneled into the, the bleeding F&B department versus putting it back into the asset that's bringing that revenue in the first place. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also a little bit guarded in my optimism that
I'm hopeful, Kevin, because there's great people around like Tom Doak and Jeff Minge that are constantly coming up with new architectural ideas to keep the game interesting as well.
Right.
Probably recently heard about 12 and 14 hole golf courses.
Yep.
Reversible golf courses. Be as unique and interesting as you can to keep the interest there. Well, you don't have to go play 18 holes in 6 hours and buy 12 beers around the golf course calling over the beverage cart every day.
Right.
Go play your golf. Whether it's 12, 14, or 18 holes, go in and then have your celebration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really respect the game. And I learned that in Ireland. There wasn't one round I played in Ireland where you were over 4 hours.
Right.
We had more fun than we did in Scottsdale with the 2 beverage carts going around.
Yep. And next time you're allowed in the country, we'll be able to play. I think it's a 13-hole course now at Gamble. They opened up Gamble Sand, their little short course this
That's
spring.
right too. How much fun would that be at the end of the day to go out there with a couple beverages, probably?
Perhaps it could happen, but yeah, I agree, and I think I was out with one of my sons this week on a course, and he's in his mid-20s, and he's taken up the game after his baseball career ended, and he's now working for a living, and his question to me was, why didn't you make us play golf when we were younger? And I think that's great. He's a little late, but
why didn't you, Kevin? I got to ask that. Why didn't you have your kids playing as much as they could have? You had the opportunity.
It was hard to get them to make their bets, and I agree. It was always a frustration of mine as with unlimited access that they weren't interested. But our kids are going to do what they want to do, and I'm happy that they've now come to it, and I'm excited because it's something we can do forever together.
Michael's probably going to be the long drive champion in the bracket here pretty soon.
It's insane. He hits it so far, but he is head over heels in love with the game now, and he needed an outlet when baseball was done, and my wife and I took him out to a local course while he was in town for a couple of days. We had a blast, and that's
what's going to allow him to carry on the game now. So you're feeling like he's 20 something, he just got introduced to the game. What's going to keep him going for the next 40 years?
I think he realizes that whether it's football or hockey or baseball, those sports have a shelf life. Whether you're injured or it comes to an end from another situation, but you only need to step foot on the practice green outside of any club in the area and see an 80-year-old guy doing the same thing you're doing to realize that this is a lifetime sport. And I think he's in it for good. And could it have happened 10 years ago? Sure. But I think it's great that he's come to it now. And there's a lot of those stories around the country this year where families, versus sitting in the stands watching the girls play ringette or watching my kids, me and my wife freezing our butts off watching a baseball game in the spring with it hailing outside, versus us walking around the golf course and enjoying each other's company. What an option. So hopefully we can keep that going.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm really optimistic. Well, Sharpie, thank you. I can't believe we're already into an hour.
Quick. It feels like I was just in a vehicle driving down.
Exactly.
With you here in BC.
I even though you were reluctant to get on at first, I think it's a great story because there's a lot of those conversations that I have. Hey, tell me about being in sales. What's good? What's bad? It's not for everybody either. I think that's one of the things that I've learned, and it's certainly. It's been a struggle for me at times because of that. We're missing that tangible, that instant gratification of being on the golf course and taking the last lap around the golf course or seeing what you did today in a project or something simple as mow lines or a compliment from a golfer. But there's certainly opportunities on both sides of the business. I think if you're
and I was very grateful when I did decide to leave that there was a whole nother industry in the Gulf, to stay with the guys that I've met all my life.
That's right.
What a great industry we belong to.
Yep.
No regrets.
And you're with a great company, and the culture is exactly what I gravitate to. And I appreciate your partnership and all the support from your company. And
yeah, thanks to EarthWorks. And again, our partnership is very good, and we're growing in Canada right now. And I look forward to with EarthWorks and Brett Young.
And maybe someday we'll ride in the truck together again. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be coming across the border to get my vaccination here pretty soon. It ain't happening in Canada.
I guess it's a little slow up there. Yeah, you can come on down here. I'm sure we can get you in somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, Duane, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it, and we'll be talking soon.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.